It's Sunday, March 6, 2011, and you're watching This Week in Linux News. It's gonna be a bit of a short episode this week, guys. Sorry about that. All of the stories that I don't quite have time to cover will be available on thisweekinlinux.com, so make sure to go ahead and check out the post over there. I'll have a link to that in the source code below. Okay, the first story, and one that kind of bugs me and it might bug you, Gnome 3 has been updated recently, and apparently they're going to be removing the maximize and minimize buttons. According to popular Ubuntu news site OMG Ubuntu, they say that the announcement email coming from the Gnome 3 team says that there are more obvious ways to maximize and minimize a window, and that workspaces could be used alternatively instead of maximizing and minimizing. Now, I know my opinion on the subject, and I think you guys do as well. I've been pretty open about the idea that if you're removing functionality that people have been using for a very long time, and functionality as simple as the maximize and minimize buttons, that's kind of ridiculous. But I'm curious to know what you guys think about it. Are you going to miss the maximize and minimize buttons? Will this affect whether or not you try or use Gnome 3, Gnome Shell, whatever it is that it's actually going to be called? And since we're talking about Gnome 3, Clem from the Linux Mint project announced this week that instead of going to Unity, they're going to be going to Gnome 3 for Linux Mint 11. However, they're going with a traditional desktop instead of Gnome Shell. They're just going to be using the Gnome 3 backend as well. I know I've heard a lot of people complaining about Unity and complaining about the possibility of having to use Gnome Shell, so this might be a great alternative, even though Ubuntu is going to offer the Classic Edition with 11.04. So if you are concerned about Unity or about Gnome Shell, keep in mind that whatever distro you're on should still have a GNOME 2.x-esque theme available for it. Alright, moving on to more fun and interesting news. A while back we talked about Unigen or Unigen. I honestly can't remember how I normally pronounce it, so we're sticking with Unigen. This is the next big 3D gaming engine that's going to be developed natively for Linux. Well, the first game that's being developed using this Unigen engine, which is called OilRush, now has pre-orders available. And I can't seem to find the site that I read it on. If I can find it, I will put it in the show notes. But it seems that the pre-orders are 90% Linux users. By the way, if you're interested in pre-ordering it, it's going to be about $20, about 15 euros, and I'll have a link to where you can order that in the show notes as well. However, keep in mind the release date has been pushed back to sometime in June. It's possible it could get pushed back even further, but with your pre-order, you should get access to betas, I believe, and you should, of course, get the game when it does come out. Alright, moving on to some not so fun news. This week it came out that there was malware available in the Android marketplace. 3 different developers took a bunch of different Android applications, copied them and embedded different malware bits, something called Droid Dream, into them, and there were a bunch of different applications out there that had it. Basically, these malware type apps had different sorts of exploits built into them, like the Rage Against the Cage exploit that would root the device, pull out all sorts of information, and report it back. However, Google being Google, they've gone ahead and started pulling the malware from the affected devices. They've created a security update for the marketplace to help prevent this and to help clean the devices that were infected. And from what I've read, they're supposed to be sending out emails to all the people that were affected by it. So if you do receive one, make sure to check the update and make sure that everything does get removed from your phone. Alright, and speaking of Android and rooting things, the Motorola XOOM has been rooted and unlocked, of course. It's been out for a little while now, so we all knew it was coming. However, a lot of people were concerned about the fact that if you want the 4G update for your Motorola XOOM, you're going to have to mail it back in. Well, what happens if you've got your device rooted and unlocked? What are they going to do? Are they going to do the upgrade for you? According to Motorola, they say yes, they will. Even if it's unlocked and rooted and whatever else you want to do to it, as long as they can get into it and put that 4G device in and load their software to it, it will unroot it, it will put it back to the default state, and they will send it back to you. So make sure that if you do send it in for the 4G update eventually, that you back everything up first. If they cannot do the update for some reason, if whatever you've done to the device prevents them from going ahead and redoing all of the firmware onto it, they will go ahead and send it back to you. They will go ahead and put the 4G device in, and you can do whatever you want to try to make the 4G work. And speaking of rooting and unlocking and whatever else to the Motorola XOOM, someone has figured out a way, and we all expected it, to put Ubuntu on the Motorola XOOM. From the article on Android Central, it is kind of as you would expect. It's not running terribly well, but it is definitely running on there, so it's a step in the direction if people do want Ubuntu on a tablet this powerful. And speaking of the tablet being just that powerful, someone has managed to overclock the XOOM to 1.5 gigahertz. And according to droidlife.com, that 1.5 gigahertz boost has really pumped up the benchmarks quite a bit. If you'd like to take a look at all of that and read up on it, there will be a link in the show notes below. And the last thing I'd like to talk about today is a site called openbenchmarking.org. I've had several people bring it to me and ask me to talk about it. It's basically a site created by the guys over at Phoronix.com, a site where I pull a lot of the news that I talk about. And basically, openbenchmarking.org is an open, collaborative environment where people can get together and test out how Linux runs on different variety of hardware. The site's been up for a little over a week now, and they've had about 40,000 results uploaded to it already, with about 250,000 unique tests having been run. So if you're interested in finding out if that new piece of hardware is going to work with Linux or not, this is definitely a great way to see how it will perform, if it will perform, whatever else. But that's about all for today. I'm going to be doing a vlog as well, so if you want to check that out, go ahead and click the link that'll be at the end of this video. As always, thank you so much for watching though, and I will see you again very soon.